want to do God's will.
What you're seeking is a blessing from God.
You must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Life Today Live. It is Monday, the day before Election Day here in the United States. And yeah, we're going to focus on this for a couple more days, and then we'll get back to some things a little more global. So appreciate you guys bearing with me, those of you who watch from outside the U.S. And really, these are issues, especially today, we're going to talk about some issues that affect you no matter where you're at. Proverbs 29:2 says, when the godly are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked are in power, they groan. And you just look through history, you will see that. Now, unfortunately, righteousness is not on the ballot. That's not what the R stands for here in the United States. But is there a better choice? And is there more than we can do than vote? And I think you should vote. We're going to talk about that and some of the issues with today's guest. Dave Kubal is the president and CEO of Intercessors For America, which is a massive grassroots organization, and they mobilize to pray and to act. And so what do we need to know? We need to know it quickly. Dave, I appreciate you. Good to see you back here on Life Today Live.
Always great to be with you.
So just what are your overall thoughts here the day before Election Day?
Sounds like you're a little weary of it, as is your audience. Is that true?
It's one of those things where you kind of look forward to something, and then when you get there, you're just ready for it to be over. Hopefully it'll turn things a little bit in the right direction here.
Well, when I think of the election, and elections, as they say, every election is the most important in history. And, I think that's really true in this day and age. I hate to use that cliche again, but the reason why I think that is because people are policy. Let me give you a little story, Randy, just to illustrate that. There was a young maternity ward nurse in the 80s who helped deliver a 16-week-old baby girl. And as this nurse watched this little baby girl fight for life, that little baby wanted the best it could to live, that seared in the nurse's heart the desire to help all that she could to protect life from the moment of conception on. And unfortunately, that baby did not live. But this nurse ended up committing her life to protecting life. She became a lawmaker in a state, and she wrote a couple of different versions of bills to protect life, none of which were actually successful until she wrote this one. And Randy, if you can imagine this, she said she felt the presence of God on this bill. And this bill went through the state house. It was voted on, approved, signed by the governor. And what as soon as it was signed, there were the progressives, the pro-aborts. They instantly sued the state of Mississippi. And it was this case that went to the Supreme Court that reversed Roe v. Wade.
Wow.
We will know it as Dobbs reversed Roe because he was the Secretary of Health for Mississippi. But the fact of the matter is Becky Curry reversed Roe. Just a regular woman, mom, maternity nurse. She is the one that ended up reversing Roe. People our policy, and we've got to remember that when we vote in this election.
Wow. Not to hang on the details too much, but when you say 16 weeks premature or 16 weeks out of
from the
point
of conception. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, obviously abortion is a big issue, and obviously the overturn of Roe versus Wade was a big deal. To me, that stresses the importance of local and state elections, does it not?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. The fight for life now obviously has gone from the federal level to the state level. And a little known fact is in this election tomorrow, November the 8th, as we're recording this, 85% of the state elected officials are up for vote.
Wow.
That's 6,278 out of some 7,000 state lawmakers are up for election tomorrow. It's absolutely mind-boggling if you think about the fact that we have the opportunity to vote in those who are willing to protect life at such a high level all across the states. I believe it's 88 of the 98 state chambers have their elected officials up for vote. 85%. It's an amazing number if you think about it.
So you're suggesting, I would think, that we tend to get caught up in presidential, politics, but it's really the state level where we will see the change.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. A lot of the focus is on the federal elections, state, Senate, and House, and we need to obviously pay attention to that. But when it comes to this single issue, at this single moment in time, as Roe is reversed, we have the opportunity to see life protected like no other time in our lives, really, Randy. And that's why I say this election is the most critical in our history, our short history as we've been alive, because of this very fact.
Yeah, and it also does mean that in 2 years some change needs to happen because, like you said, the states can do something great, but then here comes the federal government to sue you and block you and harass you and tie you up in court for years. So I want to skip a little bit because I saw a poll that just came out. I got the results this morning. I don't know if they did it yesterday or Saturday, but it said that it was like right at 70% of Americans are motivated to vote because of inflation, and people are hurting. And you're operating in an area with a bunch of people that pray. Are you hearing any financial stress in the prayer requests and in the hearts and minds of people right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when the cost to run a household has gone up by 8% this year. I mean, that absolutely has been impacting households across this country. And, when the cost of living for those receiving Social Security, it's 8-point-something% is what their increase will be just to keep up with inflation. Yeah, these are really tough times economically. And unfortunately, it's just, I think, a precursor of what could come down this road unless our current administration, makes some drastic changes.
Oh, well, I mean, he's made it clear that he's not. And you talk about, 8.5% or whatever. I know that now we had an especially hot summer here in Texas this year, like record setting. So I get that, but I can tell you my electric bill and my water bill, they jumped way more than 8%. I mean, the energy costs right now are off the charts, and I mean, that hits everybody. And we talk about the price of gas being high, and it's come down some, but it's still significantly higher than it was 2 years ago. And that doesn't just affect me when I drive to work. That affects everybody that drives trucks across the country to deliver the goods, whether it's food or clothes or whatever. I mean, it's kind of a domino effect. I just, even people who are maybe not tied into social issues or spiritually sensitive or whatever, they feel it in their pocketbooks and they're going to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're building a home right now and we're renting a home, and our landlord just out of the blue raised our rent. I think it's 15%. Those people who are buying homes are paying percentage-wise 7%. I mean, you're right. The cascading effect of inflation just gets passed along. Mm-hmm. And when we dump into an economy all this free money as it has been, it's been an inflationary nightmare.
Yeah. And if we're honest, I think Trump had something to do with that during COVID. And I get that he was between a rock and a hard place, but I'm not here to say one party is our savior and the source of all of our solutions. Although it does feel like one party is the source of a lot of our problems, if not all of them, but it's kind of wild. So as you talk to people and you motivate people to pray, and I want to talk more about the power of that in a second, I'm really wondering what are the other issues that people are like, this is what we need to pray about?
Well, I think everybody also feels the divisiveness,
Mhm.
the difference of opinions and the contrast of opinions in this day and age. And there's such a stark contrast between different people's opinions in this day and age. And, it's a hard time to just get along with people. The progressive left, I think, they are the ones that are expecting us on the right or conservative side of the political spectrum, certainly those of us with biblical values, to compromise, but they're not willing to. And they're doing everything they can to isolate us. They've got a monopoly on most major media outlets, and they make us feel like we're all alone and by ourselves. But Randy, the fact of the matter is all most recent elections, and we will see this tomorrow. There is just a thin difference between those on the right, those on the left, and as expressed by voting for the two political parties that we have in the U.S. But there's just a sliver of difference, which I believe provides an opportunity for those who are conservatives, certainly those who are of the church, who have biblical values. We're the largest values voting bloc in America. We have the opportunity, if we would show up in the polls and vote, we would see our values expressed all across this country.
Yeah, and maybe I live in a little bit of a bubble, but we were electing people for our neighborhood board. It's not an HOA, but it's a board, and I was meeting some people, and there were some people there that I know are don't vote the same way I do, and we get along great. We're neighbors. I think there's still hope when I see that there are people who disagree politically, but we're nice to each other. We watch out for each other. I've taken care of someone's dog when they were out of town this summer, and they had Biden signs in their yard last year. I was told. So I haven't given up hope in America at all, and I do think some of you go on Twitter even still with Musk taking it over, and it's just to me it's just the worst of the worst, the craziest of the craziest. I don't think it represents the average people. I hope not. I pray it doesn't. And let me ask you about that, because at Intercessors for America, you stress the power of prayer. Yeah. But yet you also don't devalue the value of action, right? What if Christians are praying right now for the election tomorrow? Do you really think it'll make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, IFA, Intercessors for America, is all about news, prayer, and action. Those are the three things that we do. So we want people to be informed. We want to invite them to come before the God of this universe and ask God to come into our time and space and make a difference. And then those of us who feel as if we should do something as a result of our time with the Lord, we act. But yeah, Randy, I really believe that sometimes God is just waiting for enough people to care enough through prayer to do something. I don't think that, there's God's sovereign will that will be done regardless of whether or not we act, whether or not we pray. But there are things that are in the balance that I believe that God is just waiting to release into our nation if people ask. We have not because we ask not, is the scriptures. So I think it's critical for us to pray as if it's up to God and act as if it's up to us.
Yeah, I think if you look at the years, decades, the Christians prayed that Roe versus Wade would be overturned and didn't see it for a long, long, long time. And in our eyes, that would feel like an unanswered prayer. But then, boom, out of nowhere, seemingly this year, gone. I think that's a spiritual win.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Randy, if I might take a little bit of time just to bring up an issue that isn't talked about a lot, unless you're in 5 states across this nation. It's back to the life issue. there are 5 states that have constitutional amendments on the ballot to either protect life or to protect the pro-abort position. And it's absolutely critical for people in California, people in Vermont, and people in Michigan to understand the fact that on their ballot is the opportunity to amend the Constitution without any limits of abortion to be put into law. Now, Randy, let's just take our minds back just a year. When Roe was limiting abortion to before 23 weeks, that was the limit. So Roe actually did limit the rights of women to abort babies. That law put us in the top 10 most barbaric, most violent nations on the face of the earth. Top 10, that law alone. So now California, Michigan, and Vermont have the opportunity to pass a law that would take that limit away. So literally, babies in the 8th, 9th month could be aborted as a result of that constitutional amendment in those 3 states. It would absolutely be tragic.
And now, when you say constitutional amendment, is that a state amendment or is that something that they're trying to push forward? I know they want it in the U.S., but is that a state thing?
It's a state amendment to codify abortion rights in California, Michigan, and Vermont. Randy, it's so crazy. There's actually an atheist, pro-life Democrat lobbying in the state of Michigan against this amendment.
Wow.
Because this pro-life Democrat atheist understands the barbaric nature that will be created in Michigan if the amendment of their constitution protects abortion up to the 8th, 9th month.
You know what? You keep hearing this phrase, codify Roe, and they want to go all the way 8, 9 months. It's not codifying Roe. It's expanding it drastically. I mean, I every time I hear that, I just go, you are lying. It's not honest.
Yeah, you're making my point exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, Roe limited abortion before 23 weeks. Roe limited women's rights, so-called rights to abortion. Well, what the progressive left are doing, what the enemy of our soul is doing, is trying to open the gates so that abortion could be infanticide even.
Yeah. And you're not exaggerating. We saw that in Virginia a couple of years ago. Anyway, I think we get it on that issue. I've got a good question from a Canadian viewer. And I don't know where this is in the U.S. I'm curious if you have any inside information, but it's the MAID Act in Canada that was passed, and it gives anyone the right to die, and it's like regardless. And in other words, it legalizes suicide, not just in cases of terminal illness or anything, just across the board. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I wish I were. That's Canadian law, and I have a hard time keeping up with it.
Right? No, I understand.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, let's think if this is a spiritual battle in front of us, if there is an entity that desires to see people's lives ended as quick as possible so that their souls could go to hell, I mean, that law makes perfect sense. And I know that the progressives have had a field day in Canada passing all sorts of crazy laws. Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And Justin Trudeau's mother was very close to Fidel Castro, and they look alike, but I won't go there. Just check it out. Go look at pictures of Justin Trudeau and
no
Fidel
comment.
Castro. No comment. Smart man. Okay, here's another big issue. And literally, again, in my talking to some neighbors this weekend, someone referred to someone who had moved in recently from California, which we hear in Texas a lot, which is fine. I don't have anything against Californians. But it was because they didn't want boys in their daughter's locker room at school. And that's what they were getting in California. Yeah. And you go beyond not just that, but taking, girls, underage girls getting abortions without parental consent. You're talking about handing out body changing hormones, and in some states, even castrating and mutilating, body mutilation of children. Yeah. And schools advising this without parents' consent, sometimes having a hand in it to some degree.
Yeah.
I think this may be an issue that repulses the average person so much that we swing the pendulum away from that craziness. What do you say?
You're right, Randy, and I pray you are right. I pray that the moral fiber of America is strong enough still to see through this incredibly evil agenda. And I can throw some stats to what you are saying. I read a study done by the state of Texas, the conservative Texas Family Foundation, I believe it was, and they researched people moving into Texas. Texas has got a big influx of people moving there, and the fear, and a lot from California. And the fear was that with that move, the Californians were bringing their liberal agenda. Yeah. Well, the opposite?
Yeah.
The opposite was found out, because just like what you're saying, that people with a moral compass don't want to raise their kids around that junk.
Yeah.
So they're moving to more conservative states. So, I pray that our moral fiber in America is strong enough to withstand this incredible onslaught of immorality we're seeing.
The other crazy thing, you talk about moving, and in Texas, we're seeing a lot of movement across our border, and numbers up. I've heard 4.5 to 5.5 million people have come over since Biden took office, crossing the border illegally or catch and release, or that. Yeah. Not by the normal means. And personally, I think immigration is great. I think it should be safe, legal, and efficient, and it's none of those things right now. But a lot of those people, I know so many. It's Texas, right? We were Mexico at one point, and a lot of them, I understand, are not from Mexico but further south. I think they're doing the same thing. They're trying to escape oppressive government.
Yeah.
Overreach of government. And now they're coming here, and the people that are saying, welcome to our sanctuary city, don't stay long. They're not too nice. And then they're going, oh, and by the way, your little Nino is probably a girl. And they're like, you're out of your mind. I don't know that this open door immigration thing is going to work in the favor of the people who think it's going to work in their favor.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I know the stats that have recently come out prove that point. Look, back during the Trump administration, I traveled with the border, with the White House, and toured it and saw firsthand thousands of wonderful men and women who just want a chance to live. Mm-hmm. You totally understand their plight. They're, as you said, trying to get away from oppressive governments and whatever, but it's all driven by organized crime.
It is.
They send out the message across their networks that for $5,000 or $10,000, you can go up and live the American dream, no questions asked. Obviously, that's how you see the surges. Have you ever wondered how these surges arise on the border? Mm-hmm. It's not individuals who are wanting the American dream. It's coordinated packs of people that are told that they can have free entry in the United States. All you got to do is give me $5,000 up front and send me $500 a month. Otherwise, your family might find an accident or something like that. And so there's that aspect. And of course, you got drugs and trafficking and all of those things layered on top of that very issue. But I'm with you. I mean, obviously, I don't know about your family, but my family, go back a couple generations, we weren't in America. And so legal immigration, absolutely. And it's God who sets the borders of a nation. It is God who appoints people to live in nations for appointed times. And if you try to go around, as it talks about in Acts 17, I believe it is what I'm referring to, then you go against God's will, and nations will suffer as a result.
You're not suggesting you shouldn't immigrate from one country to another, are you?
No, but do it legally.
Yeah, right. Oh, and that seems very simple, Dave. That makes a lot of sense.
And hey, okay, so back to the balanced point of view you said a minute ago, Randy. This is a Republican and Democrat problem.
Oh, yeah.
For decades, they have not sat at the table and figured it out together. And so, I point my finger on both sides. It's like, guys, we got to get this fixed. Now, the current administration is doing everything they can in order for people to come into the nation and catch and release, whatever. But back to your original point, Randy, that 60% of those that are coming across the border have conservative values. And they, if given the right to vote, the opportunity to vote, wherever that conversation would lead us, that point, the progressive left would not like the way they vote.
Yeah, I think they're in for a rude awakening. And, back when you toured the border, it was a lot of families. Currently, it's a lot of single men, and they're not necessarily from Honduras, Guatemala. They're coming from all over the world. It's at a whole different level right now that is very disconcerting, because it's a lot of young men coming in, and you don't know why they're coming in. They're not necessarily coming in for work. But again, we just don't know. I mean, some of them obviously are, but I don't know.
Hey,
man.
but Randy, here's the number: 8,000 people a day.
I know. It's crazy.
8,000 people a day. That's a small city a day coming across the border.
And the cartels, by the way, are armed like never before because of the cash that they're getting.
Yep.
And of course, the fentanyl problem. I don't know if you know anyone that's died from taking something they thought was something else, and it had high levels of fentanyl. I do. We need to buckle down. We got some. Not only do we have some serious voting issues right now, but we got some prayer issues, and that's what I appreciate what you're doing with Intercessors For America. Before I let you go, and I appreciate your time and insight. What can people do with your organization by visiting your website? Looks like this, ifapray.org. How can they connect, get better informed, maybe better involved, or at least coordinating the prayer as we go through all the different issues, not just
Well, I think
election.
the first thing that when you join the IFA community, you'll be amazed at, you'll be encouraged by the hundreds of thousands of people that are engaged daily almost. I mean, we have over 10 million forms of engagement every single month. So the first thing you need to be aware of, if you're thinking about if you're discouraged about praying for the nation, you got to go and get encouraged. You got to join a group of people that have the same thoughts that you have the opportunity to shape history through prayer, fasting. So go to ifapray.org, sign up, and that'll get you started.
Started. And I think that's a key word, because we got to get started. There's it's an ongoing battle. But I do think, I know we can make a difference. I've seen it before. And so if you're watching before tomorrow or tomorrow, let's pray. And let's ask that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And he always tends to like to do that through his church. So pray and act. Dave, I appreciate your time. Is there anything people need to know before I let you go?
Nope, just appreciate you and your voice and your audience. God bless you.
Appreciate all you guys watching. Hit share, because this one will be a little bit irrelevant in about 2 days. Not really, actually. It's ongoing, but we are pushing for the election. I voted. If you haven't, I hope you'll do it. I don't know if you can early vote today, but definitely get out and vote tomorrow in person. And it's numbers. It's all a numbers thing, and so you count. Your vote counts. Let's get out and do it. Hit like, hit share, hit follow, hit, what's the other one? Like, share, follow, subscribe. And we'll see you again tomorrow here on Life Today Live.
We have an opportunity
to make America a better nation. All we say to America, be true to what you said on paper.